Hey everyone, welcome to this FE7 The Blazing Blade Iron Man tier list. We're going to make one of these today because I think it will be useful, unlike a lot of the other tier lists that I make, which are more like discussion vehicles. This will be useful if you're trying to do an FE7 Iron Man and trying to figure out what units are recommended for use. Now, you don't have to adhere to this. This is not strict, like you have to play this way. If you don't, you're wrong. Like, this is like, okay, I'm actually struggling with this Iron Man. Maybe you've already failed one, you want to do another one, you're trying to figure out what to do. This will help you to pick better units if you feel the need to. But I'll also say when a unit that is like not optimal can like do some crazy stuff that might be useful actually, despite their quote-unquote low tiering. And also just be like, okay, this unit is not actually that important, stuff like that. And I haven't done a tier list in a while, so that's another reason I'm just making this. So let's get into it. So the tiers that I've made here are always good training project, good pre-promotes, stabs, utility deploy, niche applications, UDU. It looks a lot more like a character guide than a tier list, and that's intentional. But I think the way this tier list will look will be a lot more universally applicable, more recognizable for people who aren't used to farming tier lists, if that makes sense. So they're more like my character guides than my tier list of anything. So always good will be for units that I would always recommend using if you have them. You're much better off using them than not using them. You're making your run easier by using them. You should always deploy them. You should always train them, is basically what this says. A good training project is for units that are good, but do require a significant amount of investment. You should not deploy these units at base 20 maps into the game. You should train them up, and if you have trained them up and they turn out okay, they didn't get RNG screwed, you should keep using them, probably. They're recommended. But there's not room for all these. In fact, in Hector Hard mode, which this guide is for, you get very few deployment slots. So if there's a couple units you would like to use, pick them from here, but try not to pick too many. Honestly, like 3 or 4 might just be the max, just because of how strict the deployment limits are and how many of the good units are just ready to go from the get-go, which are a lot of units that aren't always good. And also in good pre-promote, which is the next tier. These are units that are not as sickly good as an always good, but they're still good at base and can be deployed without any training and be serviceable. Not as good as these guys, maybe not as good as these guys once they're trained, but still pretty good. Stabs, I made a separate category for these because I think having a C rank staff user at minimum at some points in the game is so much better than not having one, that I think they deserve a separate tier. If I didn't have this category, I would probably put these units elsewhere, probably in good training projects, but I wanted to make a separate one for them. There's like 4 or 5 maps in this game where having an extra restore staff, bigger staff, healer is so good that I think you're really gonna put yourself in a world of hurt if you don't put one of these on your team. So try to get a C rank staff user, is basically what I'm saying, beyond like the ones that you get for free. The utility deploy are like thieves, stuff like that, units that are useful, but only in a couple situations, and if there's nothing to steal or nothing to do other thing that is like utility, then you don't have to deploy them. It's kind of similar to staff utility, but I wanted to make a separate category for each, just to make it absolutely clear what they're for. Niche applications, or niche, I never know how to pronounce this word. English is not my first language. Units that could be in like training projects or like pre-promotes, but they're really not as universally useful as those other guys. So I want to have a separate tier where I can talk about things that they can potentially do if you're in a bind, or you just want to like use some units that are not in these categories. Then I would recommend these ones the most, because I think they have the most potential to help you where a lot of other units would not be able to. But you know, it's called niche for a reason. They're not very common situations, and a lot of the time you would be better off with the other ones, but you're still better off than using the UDU tier. I consider many names for this tier, like you could call them low tiers, you can call them extra intensive training projects, super resource intensive, throw picks, meme picks, funny units. You get what I mean, but I wanted to do something sort of more positive so that you do you. Another one I consider was like flex pick, but that makes it sound like these units are flexible. They're not. They're the units that are usually considered bad, and I wouldn't recommend training them, deploying them, using them. But they exist. They probably have some uses, but much less than these guys. Hope that's clear. Let's rank some units. So I'm just going to do them in the order that they're on the tier list maker. You can't see them right now, but they're like right down here. This way I won't lose track of them. Actually, no, I'm going to do it in like little groups, but you'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean. So to start with, I'm going to throw some units in always good that I think you should always use with no questions asked. So Hector, I'm going to put in always good. He's more of a training project kind of guy, because I would deploy him at base level, but he's force deployed, so he is always going to be deployed. And again, the way I treat always good is these are units that if you can deploy them, you should, and if they are force deployed, you should use them, and so you should always use Hector. He has to like always be there, and he's good when trained, so why not do so and make your life a lot easier so you don't have to protect him. A big stat for Iron Man specifically, for like a run where if you lose a run, if your Lord dies or something else terrible happens, then the run is over. In that case, it's always good to train your Lord, and especially in Hector's case where he gets so much HP and defense from being trained, this will make that much less likely. In addition, he helps you protect other units from dying, which is so good in an Iron Man setting. He helps you from like just losing. It's so good. Like, I don't know, say there's an enemy that wants to attack your Sarah. You could put Hector in the way, and now your Sarah is no longer dying. It's that simple. Units with good defense are just super, super helpful on Hector hard mode, on Iron Man. They're helpful in other contexts too, but I think in Iron Man it really shows. If you have a choice between like a unit that can maybe survive if they dodge a couple attacks, or a unit that just takes 0 damage, you want it to have the unit that takes 0 damage, and that's Hector. So normally in a tier list, there's a big difference here where Hector would be like around the middle of a tier list, because he is really good early game and then falls off a bit because he can't promote, maybe caps out at level 20, and then when he finally does promote, he only still has 5 move. It's hard to pick him up and like help him get to the front line faster, a lot of magical enemies and etc. But all that kind of goes out the window, because for this guide, it's all about, do I recommend using them? And the answer is always yes. Like, even in a map where Hector is not good, I would still recommend making use of him when you can. Now later on, there will be maps where Hector will not do a whole lot. Think of like Cog of Destiny with all the magic users, Genesis if you're going to play that map, Battle Before Dawn. All those maps you probably won't do very much, but he should still be there, and if he has an opportunity to contribute, you should give him that opportunity. So that's why I would recommend using Hector. While I'm here and I'm talking about game over conditions, I'm also going to rank Lyn and Eliwood. I'm going to throw him a U to U, and that might look like a really low ranking in a normal tier list that has like A tier through E or F tier. They're usually in either the bottom tier or the second most bottom tier, because they do have somewhat good finishes, but relatively poor starts, so they're like trading possibly good useful, whereas some other units like Will or Carla would never be that good. But for this, I'm going to put him here, because trying to train these in an Iron Man adds so much risk, especially for a hard Iron Man or hardcore Iron Man. The difference between those and a normal Iron Man, I guess, is that in a normal Iron Man, some people allow yourself to like reset a map, maybe kill a random unit if your Lord dies. Whereas in a hardcore Iron Man, if you get a game over, the run is over, you have to reset from the start, that's it. You have no choice, or it's just over. You're going to play a different game, basically. And for those, using a game over condition, actively deploying them on every map, or on a lot of maps, is just adding extra risk. Especially because these two are much more fragile than Hector. They both have to be up close to attack enemies, because swords have no true range. And they have much less HP and defense, especially Lyn. There are enemies in Hector hard mode that just one-hit kill Lyn, and you don't even have to like look that far to find them. It'll take a little bit, but they exist, and they will scare the crap out of you. Especially like long-range magic is such a big loss condition for units like this. And like, even if it's not a 1-hit kill, even if it's a 2-hit kill, that's still so scary. Lyn can be in a situation where she gets hit by an enemy, and then you vuln, and then she still dies because she just has that little HP and defense. You might think, okay, but why not train them so that when they are force deployed, which happens in several maps, then they're harder to kill off. And the truth is that it is easier to keep them completely out of range for those like 4 or 5 maps, and then not use them in any of the other ones, than it is to keep them alive and safe in all the other maps. Plus, when you're using all the other maps, they're taking up valuable deployment slots that could have gone to better units to help you keep your other units safer. So you're investing a lot more than what you're gaining out of it. That might depend a little bit on your playstyle. Maybe if you're very accustomed to using Lyn and Eliwood and keeping them safe, and you play at maybe a very slow pace, then it might be helpful. But generally, I don't think they really give you a whole lot. Like, maybe if you think you're not good enough at the maps where they're force deployed, like Unfulfilled Hearts, the Vida map, or Sense of Time, which is the Denning map, both defense/survive maps, or the final chapter, it is a little bit scary to deploy like a base Lyn or a base Eliwood there, especially if they're like, there's no levels whatsoever. But I still think it's easier to keep them safe there than it is to keep them safe anywhere else. And that's why they're in you do you tier. Because I do not recommend deploying these units and adding extra loss condition to your map. And I recommend instead learning how to keep them safe in the couple of maps where you have to deploy them. So that's where I would rank Lynn and Elliewood. The next unit I'm going to throw in always good is Marcus. Marcus, again, is not always good. Late game maps, he does fall off. But early on, he stops you from dying and kills so many enemies that I can't not put him here. And even when he's no longer the best unit on your team, he's still going to be useful for doing like rescue drops, or maybe hitting an enemy with a Brave Lance or a Brave Axe, or really just using silver weapons in general still like provides chunky damage to enemies that he's not one-on KO and like one-on KOing. He can use effective weapons like the hammer or the armor slayer. So even late game, he has so many applications, and he has a move. He can rescue drop people around. That might sound like, oh, Mecha, you're so LTC brained, talking about rescue dropping an 8 move as if they're the most important units for casual players. No, this is useful too for casual players. If you got a guy in enemy range and it turns out, oh, they're actually likely to die in this position, Marcus can rescue drop them out, and he can do this without any investment, any promotions, items, anything like that. He can just help you out in almost every map that you have him. So you should almost always deploy Marcus, unless you have like so many good training projects trained up that they are superior to Marcus, like all around. This is rare though, because Marcus has a couple things that other units do not have, even while trained. He usually has a better skill stat than someone like Sane would have. He has a lot more res than a lot of training project units, because those have like base 1 or 2 res and a really low growth, whereas Marcus is like 10 base res or something ridiculous like that. So he's less vulnerable to long range magic and status stabs than those other units have. So even when Marcus is no longer the best unit, he still has like niche applications. But for the first chapters up until like Dragon's Gate or so, Marcus is just really good at frontlining. If you really don't want him to get kills, I think you should get kills, but if you really don't want him to, you can rescue some scrub like Bartray or Lynn or Elliewood if they're deployed, and have him weaken enemies like that. But honestly, Marcus is so powerful, you probably should just let him use his full stats to his full potential. And it's okay if you take a couple kills here and there, just to keep your units safe. Again, I think bulk is really important, and Marcus is one of the bulkiest units you have early on to keep your units safe. So that's why he's an always good, because you should always use Marcus. While we're talking about bulk, I'm going to throw Oswin in always good as well. Again, usually for a tier list, you don't throw Oswin in the highest tier ever. But for an Iron Man, especially for an Iron Man where you're not as knowledgeable about the game than someone who's played it for like literal years, Oswin is just such a good safety net for early game. And the early game maps are so geared around keeping Oswin relevant. Almost every map has choke points that he can start right next to, or it's just so small that his low movement doesn't really matter. And there's very few units that hit really hard. I just basically put all 3 of them right here. That's it for your early game offense and defense, basically. So he stands out a lot more about your other units. This is the reason he's level 9. His defense is so high, he can take a hit from like every enemy on the map and survive, and then probably 2-shot them back. His attack is so high, he likely sets them up to be killed by your weaker units. He is just so valuable, and he can stay that valuable for roughly the same time as Marcus, honestly, around like chapter 20, chapter 21. A little bit beyond that, honestly. I would say Oswin falls off less than Marcus. He starts less good, but he also falls off less than Marcus. There is a point where Oswin is no longer, quote-unquote, the optimal deploy, especially maps where you have to be really fast to not lose important objectives, especially like game over objectives. Battle Before Dawn comes to mind. If you over-rely on Oswin for a map like Battle Before Dawn, you probably lose. Like, your Zephiel is probably going to die. So I do not recommend like just falling back on Oswin every map. You do need some training projects to go through, to just like put up with. Not to say you can't beat this game with 0% growths. It's been done before. In fact, the footage probably shows my 0% Iron Man right now. But if you only rely on Marcus and Oswin to do all the work, you're going to have more trouble in Battle Before Dawn, because that map is really nice to have a high move unit with good offense and good speed especially. You really want a unit like that for that, and neither Marcus nor Oswin has that. But basically up until that point, Oswin can almost always provide that safety net, choke point holder, defensive enemy baiter. Like, one of the best strategies in Iron Man in general is just put a bulky unit in range of most of the enemies, check if they survive, probably in reverse order, and just have them weaken all the enemies and then kill them with your scrubs. That's a really good gameplay loop that will get you through 90% of the challenges in Fire Emblem in general. And All these 3 units are really good for that. So that's what I would recommend for someone trying to get through their first Iron Man, for example. So that's Oswin. Let's go through a couple of other early-ish units, some training projects now. So for a good training project, I said you would like to have a high move units for Battle Before Dawn, and there's a couple of them that can work. None of them are ideal, but if you have multiple of them, you can probably make it work with almost any team config otherwise. So some training projects that I think are good are Sane, Kent, Lowen. So basically just the early Cavs right here. All these units are somewhat inconsistent, and all of these require some work. So what I would recommend you do is you train them all a little bit, and whichever one of them is getting the best level ups, you keep using that one. They're all roughly similar. They do have their differences. They're very different in the end, in fact. But at base, they're very close to each other, within like 1 or 2 points in the most important stats. So Sane and Kent are much better if you play through Lin mode first. This tier list doesn't really assume either way. I don't think any unit's rank would really significantly change or drop depending on that. In fact, I would put them all in the same categories. Some of them are much better with Lim mode, like these two and Florina, but in general, they should be in the same tier here. So, Sane and Kent, when they join with no Lim mode bonuses, they're honestly kind of crappy. I'm always shocked at how bad they look when you're playing in like Chapter 17, Whereabouts Unknown, where like Raven is coming at you, and you try to kill like enemies with Sane and Kent, and they, depending on what weapon they use, they're either inaccurate, weak, or slow, or all 3, honestly, depending on who you use. And Lowen can have the same problem. Lowen has the advantage of being around in the early game with better bases than they have. He's like 7 strength, 7 speed, whereas they are like slightly behind on that. But he's got the Hector mode chapters to get some training on. There's like 2 defend maps where he can grind experience, and there's a lot less competition for him. Is that true? Well, kind of. I usually find Lowen is like slightly better off than Sane and Kent if there's no Lim mode by the time that they're all around, but the differences aren't large. The point is they all have like their different places where they can get their experience, and whichever one turns out the best you should use. Sane is likely got a lot of strength, Kent is likely more of like a middle ground unit with a bit more speed, and then Lowen is much more tanky but has offensive troubles. His strength and speed growth are worse than the other 2, but usually they should double the slower enemies at least, and maybe some middle speed enemies, and they're not going to double mercenaries and Myrmidon, stuff like that. And then Sane might have a shot at like one-shotting enemies, or maybe he can 2-shot some of the tougher enemies like Wyvern Knights. He has an easier time with those than Kent and Lowen do. But, you know, they're still in a good class. Cavalier is the best unpromoted class to be. 2 weapon types is better than 1. 7 movement is better than 5. The emergency rescue drop utility is really nice for Iron Man. And I did say bulk is really important, so I should probably pitch a little bit harder for Lowen. It's just Lowen's offense can be so terrible in the mid to late game. There is only 1 Night Crest available for a fairly long time. I think you get the second one from Eubens, so you could theoretically promote both Oswin and the Cavalier. I honestly really like promoting Oswin for Iron Man runs with the first Night Crest from Chapter 17. I do it as early as like the Pirate Ship chapter, even if Oswin isn't quite level 20 yet. He gets such big promotion bonuses, and he has such good stats, generally speaking, no pun intended, that you don't really have to worry about missing out on a couple of level ups for him. And XP gain is so slow for him at such a high level that, honestly, he's not going to get a whole lot of less XP. But the extra, like, speed that he gets is so nice from it. Whereas the Cavaliers, if you promote them early, they miss out on so many levels, I think, that it's not worth doing, unless you're using them as a flunky, where they're just kind of helping out, but not actively seeking kills, or being long-term training projects. But generally, I think they work best as training projects. There's one thing I didn't mention here, and that's the Lin mode Night Crest and the ability to promote them, Sane and Kent there. If you're training them to like level 15 or even level 20 and then promoting them, if you're like boss abusing, they become a lot better. In fact, I would put them in always good if that is what you did. If you did like a Lin mode grind on these as opposed to just like training them and not promoting them, if you actually grinded them and gone to promotion, then they are actually ridiculous. They do still lose on to Marcus in like resistance and skill probably, but everything else it should be on par or right there depending on what level you promoted them at. So obviously if you're going to grind them in Lim mode, they're much better off. So yeah, level them and then see which one turns out the best really. Maybe if you play Lim mode, you can see which one levels first or levels better. If you're not playing Lim mode, You probably want to like maybe deploy one cav in 17. I don't know if you have room for both. It depends. But yeah, just try them out, see if they work for you. Okay, so I mentioned Florina. We might as well rank her next. I'm gonna like put her alongside Fiora here because they're very similar units. I also think these are both good training projects. It's good to have a flyer. We're probably just gonna do all the flyers next. So flyers in an Iron Man, I think they're useful to have because their emergency rescues are the best, and they can secure objectives before they get like lost, like villages or chests that are being like contested by thieves, or maybe they can drop another unit that's really good at combat far into the fray that is like really safe, like say an unpromoted Florina grabs a promoted Oswin and dumps him like 5 miles into enemy range and he just kills everything. Stuff like that is just useful. Even if you're not playing for a low turn count, most people are not. Even if you're just trying to win an Iron Man, these kind of things come in handy and you should look for these opportunities when you can. Especially in conjunction with like a Dancer, this is just really good. In addition, there's a map like Crazed Beast Chapter 25 or where it's just nice to fly a flyer across the lake to kill some other enemies ahead of time. Just speed up the pace a little bit, make the game less tedious for you. These are all, I think, more quality of life kind of things than anything else. But the cost is that you have to train these units with really low base HP, low defense, low strength, and then good speed, but then low constitution so that like anything heavier than a Slim Lance weighs them down. That is very unfortunate, and it sucks to go through, but it's worth it for one unit. You probably shouldn't train multiple of these because it adds more tedium, and it can be kind of annoying to do. So I would pick one, whichever one you like better. Maybe if you're trying Florina out and she gets like really strength screwed, you can just swap over to Fiora. Roughly speaking, Fiora will turn out roughly the same as Florina, so just try them both out, see which one gets better levels is another good approach here. If your Florina ends up bad, then Fiora will just be a better version of her. If your Florina ends up good, you can just use Fiora as a flunky until she's no longer good. That's how I use them in an Iron Man playthrough. And that's pretty much the application. It's just turn them into a really good flyer, and hopefully they're good enough. And then like two of these, like a Cav and a Falcon Knight, should help you get to Zephiel in time in Battle Before Dawn, along with a couple of other tools that we'll get into. I'm mentioning Battle Before Dawn a lot because that is a very, very good opportunity to game over in an Iron Man playthrough. I do have an Iron Man guide video where I go over many things, but especially like how to beat Battle Before Dawn. So I will try to link that somewhere. But yeah, I'm really emphasizing that for that reason. It's a very big like death trap for Iron Man runs. And Florina and Fiora, and they also really helpful to train because they have a good resistance stat. And Hector Hard Mode loves to put magic units in a lot of maps. The most famous one is Cog of Destiny, but you also have Genesis, Sands of Time, Night of Farewells, the map with Sonya. There's a lot of chapters where having high resistance is honestly almost as valuable or even more valuable than having high defense, and I have been emphasizing how important defense is. So having a unit like this that can just swallow up pure water and take 0 damage from mages or very little is very good. You still have to watch out for Luna. Luna on Druids can just one-hit KO your units and there's nothing you can do about it, except just keeping them away and then maybe killing them on players with a Brave Lance or using another unit to bait them in that doesn't face critical hits. Stuff like that is helpful to have. And you'll be very grateful that you did go through the trouble of training these, even though they do kind of suck at the beginning. Now, again, just like with Kent and saying, Florina is available in the mode, and she can be invested there. You can give her an Angelic Robe or an Energy Ring or both. Give her a lot of levels, and she will be much better off than she would be if you don't train her. Hector mode only Florina is honestly really tough to work with. Like, her strength and speed feels so terrible. I think she like kind of auto levels from her limb mode bases, but only like 2 levels, and I think 9 of them are speed basically. So she feels really slow as well. So if you're playing Hector mode only and no limb mode, then I would honestly kind of recommend Fiora, but Florina is still not a bad training project. Now I'm gonna wrap it up with the other Pegasus sisters here, or with the other flyers here, and including that Farna. I also think Farna is a good training project. She costs money, but you have so much money that 20k cash, as long as you free it up beforehand and you don't spend it by accident, is not that much. The map after she joins, you get a white gem from Louise, and the couple maps before that, you get the Ocean Seal from the desert. You can steal a white gem from Jasmine in the desert. You get 10k from Kinship's Bonds chest if you're fast enough. And there's also probably some promotion items that you're just not using that you can sell. So you should have the money to buy Farna's services. And Farna is like basically the same as Florina and Fiora if you ignore the fact that she's not available for more than half the game. But once she joins, you could just farm her on the Monks and Crazed Beast, get her promoted by the end of the chapter, and then you have a Falcon Knight that's good enough to help you in Battle Before Dawn. So there's no reason to pass her up just because you didn't use the earlier ones. In fact, it's probably better to use her there. There's also a Legion Whip in that chapter there, so even if you lost the Legion Whip on the way there, you can always promote her by the time you get to Crazed Beast. So you know that this is going to be an option for your late game. So if you somehow skimmed on like having a flyer early on, this is a good backup. The drawback is you won't be able to take advantage of her before she joins, and there are a couple maps where it's nice to have a flyer like this, but honestly the best maps for a Falcon Knight are after Farina joins. So I really don't mind using her in the context of Hector Hark mode. I just can't really put her very high on a tier list because she does join kind of late, and she does have pretty rare bases that require a lot of investment. But if it's just like a casual playthrough Iron Man kind of thing, there's nothing wrong with that. So that's why I'm putting Farina here. Pretty big gap between what this would be and a regular tier list. Like, I actually think Farina is really good for casual playthroughs. I'm gonna just wrap this up with the last flyer training project here, and that's Heath. Heath joins a little bit before Farina, and he also has a bit of a rough start, but I find it easier to feed him kills than any of the Pegasus Knights at any point in the game because his strength is good. And his speed is bad, but not so bad that he gets like doubled by everything, and he doesn't get weighed down, so oftentimes his speed will be roughly the same as the Pegasus Knight when they're both using an equally heavy weapon like an Iron Lance. And he has better bulk. He's got better HP, he's got better defense, and he's got better strength that makes him easier to feed. Like, if you're gumming down an enemy to feed to a training project, it's often better if that unit just has more power, because then there's more ways you can weaken an enemy that Heath kills afterwards than for Florina or Fiora or even Farina, but Farina is more self-sufficient. And then Heath is nice to train because they have a bulky flyer, and you can send him into physical groups of enemies. You have to be... You kind of watch out with a bit for... You have to watch out a bit with Heath early on because he has so many weaknesses, effectively. He's either weak to axe users when he's using a lance, like a regular lance, or he's weak to swords if you're using an axe reaver. Then he's weak to bows, obviously being a flyer, and his res is also shit. So unless you're using like a Pure Water and or Nenni's Grace, he's probably going to like die to 2 or 3 mages. So you have to be particular about his positioning, but it will pay off. He doesn't have the high res that the Pegasus Knights do, which hurts in, like, again, Cog of Destiny, Sands of Time, all the maps with status halves around. So don't get your Heath berserked. That is a great way to just lose. He'll probably kill your Ninian and just kind of destroy you like that. So don't let that happen. But on the other hand, you can put him in like groups of wyverns or just groups of like fighters or mercenaries. He'll kill them. Chapter 24 is a good opportunity to farm him. That's the Linus chapter. Or the Lloyd chapter, I guess. You have to watch out for like ballistas, but there are a lot of mercs to train him. Actually, the Lloyd chapter does have like Fog of War, so it's probably not great. The Linus chapter is good, but that requires training later in Netherwood. It's actually a better chapter to farm is chapter 25, Crazed Beast. You can send him to the pirates parts with all the axe users, give him an axe reaver, get a bunch of XP there, or you can find maybe some Cavaliers to pick off, watch out for ballista ranges. Or if you're really brave, you can give him a Pure Water and have him fight monks, but watch out for crit rates and stuff like that. Desert is also a good training map for him. Kinship Spawn has a couple of enemies that are somewhat easy to set up for him. You do have to find these opportunities, and it is a training project for a reason. That's why he's not always good. But once these units promotes, they can be equally good or better than the units in here. Keep that in mind. So I've been mentioning Ninian a couple times. So I'm just going to throw her in here now. So it's Ninian here. Might as well do Nils as well. Dancers are good. I had a comment on my tier list video essay about how in these kind of tier lists for like an Iron Man or for like a less informed playthrough by like maybe a blind player or semi-blind player, maybe first time Hector Hardwell player, dancers should be lower because they're harder to keep safe. I disagree with that. I do think it can be hard to keep them safe sometimes, but I also think their utility is so good that it doesn't even matter. As long as you have like 5 or 6 or more deployment slots, you should always deploy your dancer, I think, because your next best unit is probably going to be worse than your dancer. If you have like 10 or 11, it's a no-brainer. They can just extend your movement range, and again, it's not just useful for LTCs, but think of like a map like Kinship's Bond, which is filled with choke points and enemies right behind them. If you can secure those choke points on the first player phase or the second player phase before the enemies are flooding in, you could just fight one enemy at a time for the rest of the map, whereas if you leave them to come out in the open, you have to keep your units safe from like 5 different enemies coming from 5 different angles in a wide open space, it is much harder. Similar in sense of time. They're helpful in Cock of Destiny to put a unit on like a bridge somewhere that's far away, or to Ninja's Grace someone to keep them from dying. Ninja's Grace also protects against status effects because the game cannot use status staffs to override the status of Ninja's Grace. So many things you can do. You can do like a turn 1 rescue drop to get a unit like Marcus or Oswin, or with the flyer you can rescue I don't know, Kanasin for far if he's like up against a bunch of mages. There's just a lot of ways to secure objectives faster with Ninja Nils. A map like, I mean, any map where you gotta chase something fast is just nice for them. Also good to like feed training projects with. If you're training up someone like Heath, it is a lot easier to do so when he has an extra turn every time. Think of like the Desert chapter, where he can move very far, but he can't both attack and use an item. You can have Heath use a Pure Water turn 1, dance for him, and then put him in range of a bunch of mages using a javelin. And he can still attack that turn. So you can just have him player phase attack something, maybe kill it, and then on enemy phase you can fight a bunch of mages. Something like that. Very useful. So, and Ninja's Grace also helps a lot with that. You can Ninja's Grace Heath, throw him into a bunch of enemies with a javelin. He'll survive because he has plus 10 defense and resistance. And the next turn he can either kill one, or you can have him fly back to Ninian or Nils. Mostly Ninian, of course. Fly back to Ninian, maybe use a healing item, then get danced, and then fly back in if you get hurt. Or you can fly back, use Pure Water this time, then fly back and do an attack. There are so many applications for an extra turn that go beyond clear the map faster. And Ninian and Nils will provide those utilities. Okay, let's do some good pre-promotes while we're here that aren't always good. So I think one of them is definitely Hawkeye. He's very, very strong at base, like lots of HP, lots of strength, good enough defense to survive a bunch of hits. Not that much speed, like about as much as base Marcus, if not the exact same. But he's so bulky, and he's generally not enough speed to not get doubled at least, and there's still a lot of slow extra hard mode enemies that he does double. And he just equips a hand axe, and he clears a map, clears like a whole section of a map if you want him to. He's also got the crit bonus, the 50% crit bonus with the killer axe, so if he fights like 3 enemies, he'll probably crit 2 of them on enemy phase. But generally, just having high bulk and a hand axe is good enough to be useful in extra hard mode always. And just, again, this unit just joins like that. He's just nearly invincible for free, so why not deploy him always? He's just so powerful. He can walk up peaks and mountains and water if you want him to, and these are occasionally useful, but not super useful. Just generally just good. It's hard to like explain exactly why Hawkeye is good when he's so straightforward, but you should always deploy Hawkeye if you have a slot for him, unless you're trying to do something different. Again, you don't have to. In the same vein, I would recommend you do the same with Pent. And this is probably when we get into some magic users here, because we've been doing just physical units. When Pent joins, you should always deploy him, because whether you want him to just one round an enemy that he can just do at base, or heal one of your units, or restore them, or barrier them, or do a faraway physic, or anything else like that, it's so good. There's just no reason not to, again, unless you have like specific plans with like minions, then you can do something else. But it is never wrong to deploy Pent. That's probably the best way to phrase it. It's not wrong to do so. It's never wrong. Probably the most useful unit you have by that time in the game, because there's just so many things you can do. And the most important thing is just having the ability to restore or barrier someone to prevent them from getting statused. And the reason this matters so much is because Hector Heart mode just throws around so many of these. So the biggest like streak of them I found is after Battle Before Dawn, you have Sands of Time. No, not Sands of Time. Night of Farewells. There's a lot of like X of Y kind of maps in there in FE7. So you got Night of Farewells, where you have a Berserk Staff, and a Sleep Staff, and a Silent Staff. Then you have Cog of Destiny, which again is multiple of these. Multiple Sleeps from the top of my head. I think 1 or 2 Silences, and at least 1 Berserk, maybe 2. And as well as long-range magic that you want to barrier against. And Pent's A-rank staff, you can just use everything you want him to ever. It's almost even a waste to use a C-rank staff with him, because he can physic, whereas other units can often not. But that's just so good. So you have those in Cog of Destiny. Then you have Sands of Time, basically right afterwards. Again, one of each of these staves. Victory or Death has a couple of these. And even endgame, even the final chapter, has a Berserk Staff right at the end. And also even in the Dragon chapter, there is a group of status staffs. Those shouldn't matter, but he's still there with a Restore Staff for you, probably, if you need it. So, yeah, just useful in almost every map he's in, but especially useful because status staffs are such an easy way to lose, especially the Berserk Staff. Sleep can also be just deadly if your units get slept in the middle of a bunch of enemies, and they just can't wake up and they can't counter. Restore just takes care of the problem right there. And Pent is nice because you can put him in the middle of a bunch of enemies to restore someone else, and he'll probably survive. I would recommend you always try, if you're deploying Pent, try deploying him higher up in the unit order, and just generally do that with restore users. That way enemy staff users are less likely to target them because of an AI bug. If you don't want to exploit bugs, then don't pay attention to that. But if you want like a free kind of exploit to make sure he doesn't get statused, that is a way to do it. You can also just apply a barrier to him to make that less likely to happen. So that's why staffs are so important, and that's why I'm going to just kind of throw all these units in the staffs category, even though they're primarily magic users for the most part, like Canas and what's the other one? Lucius over here. These are all trading projects, but they can use staffs, so they go in the staff category. Sarah just main staffs from the start, so it's very easy to get into C staffs. I think she starts with D, if I recall. Might be E, but I think it's D. But she's gonna have C if you use her throughout the game. Even if you don't promote her, just having a 5-move person to use the restore staff with can be worth it, especially if like some of your audience died. Urk and Canas have E rank staffs after promotion, but it's not difficult to get them to C rank by the time you really want it. And if you really, really want it, you can get them to B or even A. But C is the minimum. I would ask, like, if you're going to play Genesis, I would honestly try to stretch out the previous chapters to try and get the C staffs, just to have the option to barrier and restore in Genesis. If you're not going to play Genesis, if you're going to skip it, and I don't blame you if you do, because the chapter is very difficult, you can delay it a bit and then try to do it by the time you get to Battle Before Dawn-ish. Maybe, like, definitely by Night of Farewells, you should have restore rank. But that's pretty easy to reach, even if you're just using heals. In general, just having healing is a nice extra pool of experience. You don't compete for combat kills with all these other units. You can just train yourself after that point. But also just having magical offense every now and then is nice to kill armor knights. So like all three of these units have, I wouldn't say exactly the same stats, but they're really closer than a lot of people seem to think sometimes. Eric has some trouble reaching like offensive benchmarks sometimes, and his bulk isn't too great. He's probably the worst one long term, but he joins the first, so it's you get to train him first. I think Canas is the easiest one to use because he's 2 levels from promotion, so you can give him an early guiding ring at like level 10 if you want to, or 15 if you prefer, or 20 if you really prefer to like take a long time to promote people. But I like to promote Canas early just to have an extra healer available that can also do combat very well because his bulk is much better and he only requires 2 levels of investment. Lucius, I think, is the hardest one to train because he joins at like level 3 if you didn't play limb mode and grind him there, and around the same time as Canas. And then he has like the worst bulk and a chance to get crit in an Iron Man because he has such low luck stat. And like people talk about light magic. I don't hate light magic that much because his magic stat is so much better than Urk's that it comes out to like roughly the same offense. But he does have light magic and it does suck. And like you definitely feel that sometimes. They have the same offense roughly, but I think Lucius has a worse start because he just joins significantly later after like several more maps that Urk has to train up. But if your Urk levels poorly, you can switch to Lucius. Lucius's advantage, of course, is that he just gets C stats on promotion. You don't have to grind him with like heals and mends to get to C. He just has it. So you could literally, if something like really dire happens, like your Urk dies of fever in like chapter 19, and you still have the guiding ring, you can just start deploying Lucius and try to train him up in time, and then promote him at level 10, and you'll have a C rank staff user. That is still an option. But generally, I would recommend Canas the most out of these, if you're looking for like a unit that can both heal and attack people. But all of them kind of work. You'll notice I left 1 staff user out here, and that is Priscilla, but she goes in always good. I think even if you're not actively heal grinding on Priscilla, she's still a good deploy for 90% of the game. Just because the 7 move means it doesn't really matter if she's promoted or not. You can just have her keep up with the rest of your units and heal them. She can do emergency rescues, but she also just has the ability to mend someone for a bunch of HP. Again, even if you didn't like really invest into her. I wouldn't recommend trying to raise both Priscilla and Sarah unless you're like really in for a heal grind, because not always are there like 2 injured units that they can both heal safely. Usually I think it's better to have one of them And if you're going to have one, Priscilla is obviously a better choice because there's not really an advantage that Sarah has over Priscilla unless you really grinded her very hard in limbo mode. But Priscilla is just so flexible, can do something useful almost every turn, whether that's rescuing or healing, or take dropping, that's pretty good too. Or even if it's just like something like Marcus kills an enemy with a Silver Lance and then Priscilla comes in, trades him to Javelin to the top, and then cantos away. Sarah can't do that. It's just really good. But all the things I just said about Pence and these units and their ability to use stabs late game also apply to Priscilla. She can do all these things. So that's why I put her here to emphasize, like, okay, she's always a good deploy. Even if you didn't deploy her for like 5 maps, you can still just bring her back and use her. It'll be good. You do have to keep her safe. Like, she's as frail as your Dancer is probably at that point. But with 7 move, how hard can it be, right? So that's how I use these units. I guess in the same vein, I might as well do Renault, because it's like a good pre-promote, but it's like the type of unit that's like not nearly as good as someone like Hawkeye or Pent, but still exists. And if there's like a gap in your team, like an empty deployment slot that you're not sure what to put in, by the time you get Renault with the last chapter, there's worse deploys, so you might as well. But that's the type of unit I would that's the type of unit that Renault is. I might as well fill the rest of the good promotes in now just to see what I mean. So I think that Isadora is a good pre-promote. She is a waifu officially because I made a video about her that I called waifu. But I do not think she's on the same level as Hawkeye or Pent. I honestly can't do that in good conscience. She's around more than Pent is. She's like available for longer, but for the tier list it doesn't matter. Isadora's probably a good deploy whenever she's around. You might have training projects that turn out better than her, like if your Kent is like level 20/1, I think he beats Isadora in some stats. Not speed, I think speed is like roughly equal. Isadora gets weighed down a bit by the Silver Sword, but they both should double things. The thing with Isadora though is that without any training, she can one-round almost any generic. I think any generic besides like a hero, like any unpromoted generic at base with the silver or an effective weapon or a Reaver or something. As long as you pick the right weapon, Isadora can one-round an enemy, is just the thing with her. And she can usually do it safely because she has 8 moves, so she can pick the best position for it. And she can pick all 3 different weapon types. Swords, lances, axes, doesn't matter. Marcus can do that too. Isadora is like a bit more reliant on it. Like if you pick the wrong weapon with Isadora, if you like Javelin a pirate with an steel axe or a halberd, probably not going to end well for her. But if you give her the right loadout, she can do almost anything you want her to. If the enemy composition is very simple, like if it's just a bunch of pirates from the pirate fort in the bottom left of Crazed Beast, she can do that very easily. If you're up against like all the Cavaliers in the northern part of that map, you can give her a Lance Reaver and she will just crush it, especially if she's on terrain. She'll do fine. But she does require some good weapons to do so. And her stats are a little worse. She's a little more fragile. She's not as good of a generalist as someone like Oswin, Hawkeye, Pence, Marcus, Hector. She's not going to survive if you give her the wrong weapon, or if you just give her like javelins and hand axes. So you have to be more careful. But in a map like Battle Before Dawn, where you just have to rush through the map fast to get to Jafar and Nino and Zephiel, this unit keeping up with your units is good. Even if she dies on her way there, even if she dies to like an Ursula bolting, she probably still helped you by doing that, just because one of your units didn't take that hit. Like if it's between Heath dying, where's Heath? It's between like Heath dying to that bolting and Isadora dying, you probably take Isadora dying. So in a way, she's useful for baiting enemies like that. If you're like doing like sacrifice strats, it is good to keep in mind that an enemy that kills one of your units is not dying on enemy phase, and that can be very bad if they're just in your camp now. But a lot of the time, this can be the right move to make, is to sacrifice one of your units. And Isadora, it wouldn't be my favorite sacrifice personally. I'd be kind of personally insulted if you sacrifice Isadora, but might as well talk about that here. It can be helpful to do sometimes. But just generally, just have her come if you don't have a better unit, if a lot of your units died, or if you have like a training project that's not turning out well, or it's just not a good map for them, or you don't want to risk their like life. Maybe you're in Genesis and you don't really want to bring your poor unpromoted like Kents that you're like treasuring. Just bring Isadora and just have her use something good, and it'll probably work out for you. What else is good pre-promote kind of guy? Jafar, another good example. Doubles enemies in Cock of Destiny, doubles Valkyries, most of them anyway, and just generally kills things, but not as broken. And the lack of 2 range is especially a big deal that late in the game, because almost every enemy, every scrub is easy to kill. with like a javelin or a hand axe, like mages, shamans, monks, archers, javelin guys. There's so many of those, and Jafar just cannot kill them on enemy phase unless they position very weirdly. So Jafar's less good. But if there's like a single guy you need dead on a player phase, he can probably take care of it. That's literally the job of an assassin. So he's very good at that. Let's see here. That's kind of it for... No, there's not a good one. Louise is not a good pre-promote. A support with Pent provides them both with +3 defense and res, so it makes Pent a lot tankier. Mostly useful in choke points, because if you put Louise and Pent in range, they're going to go for Louise, because she's an archer and doesn't counterattack most of the time and has worse defenses. But if they go for Pent and Pent doesn't die, you'll probably kill them. That's great. And in addition, Louise has a couple of other like funny niche applications that would make me want to put her here instead. In fact, maybe she should... Yeah, she should actually be here. I'm a little wrong here. She should be a niche application. Let me double check my old tier list that I made. I think I put her here. I didn't. Okay. I think I'm going to put her here instead. This is like... Yeah, because I wouldn't deploy this unit in almost every map if I have like an empty slot on my team. Like, there's probably some cases where you would use like a Flunky Cavalier or Flyer or something. Specifically for Cog of Destiny and any map that has Luna Druids, Louise can reach a point where she doesn't face any crit from Luna Druids, so she can counter them on enemy phase with a Silver Bow, or you can Brave Bow them on player phase to try and kill them before they attack you, but I think she doesn't have the strength for that usually. Or you can Longbow them to weaken them for someone else to kill. Similarly with a Valkyrie, if you have a unit that almost wanted Kyoza but not quite, Louise can chip them first with an Iron Bow or a Longbow. Iron Bow is more accurate, but you take a like small counter. Longbow is like you don't take a counter, but it's like you can miss. And stuff like that is just helpful occasionally, especially if you're in range of Pent. If she dies, you do lose Pent though, so you have to be very careful with Louise. Like you treat her, you gotta protect her. She's important. You gotta, she's the best. You gotta keep her alive because otherwise Pent will leave if she dies. It's the same vice versa, but we don't care as much about Louise leaving if Pent dies than vice versa, you know. Other than that, their bonuses don't really do a whole lot. I think they give full hit as well, because I think it's wind ice. Okay, it's light ice. Okay, so they give each other full defense and full hit. I remembered correctly, kind of. So hit is not that important for Pent, but it can be important for Louise if she's trying to like hit Brave Bow shots. So yeah, I think that's useful, but there's a lot of maps where just having a sniper around is not that important. So I wouldn't stress over deploying her every map, basically. That's like a niche application I was thinking of. So let's rank some more bad units. I mean, UD units. So Will, you could... I almost put him in niche applications because he can fight exactly 2 Pegasus Knights in his joining chapter on enemy phase with his bow, and it's the most optimal thing to do. The easiest way to clear the chapter without Lyn dying or any of your calves dying. It's just really good. But that's the only thing I can recommend him doing. Any deployment of Will afterwards is just flexing on the game, which is fun, but I wouldn't recommend it to someone trying to win if I wanted their percentage chance to do so to be at their highest. So wouldn't recommend. Dorcas and Bartray, similarly, kind of silly units to use. They can be very fun because high HP and high strength kind of activates some kind of caveman brain in me, but Dorcas doesn't really have that much strength, and Bartray's speed is so poor that even 0 ES enemies don't get doubled by him at base, so you really gotta hope for that 40% speed to proc, and that is like... And that's like soldiers and maybe armor knights that he can double. And anything beyond that would just be really lucky. I wish their promotions gave them speed, but they don't. And other than that, they don't really have a whole lot going for them that you can't get from other units. So I wouldn't recommend them either. Wallace, similarly, wouldn't recommend using him because he just doesn't double anything. I guess we'll throw Merlinus in the utility deploy because, you know, why not? We'll throw the Thieves in utility deploy because you would only deploy them if there's something important to steal from a chest or from an enemy. That doesn't happen very often in Hector mode, but the times it does happen, you really want to have them. So I can't say they're bad. Their combat is kind of subpar, but there are some points in the game where it can be helpful, like Matthew early on against axe users, and Legault in the mid-game. I famously can 1-on KO Wyvern Riders in Kinship's Bond with a Worm Slayer because they have axe reavers. And sometimes you find an enemy with an axe reaver, you can fight them. But generally speaking, these are not for combat. These are for thief utility. And I'm also just going to do some more no-brainers. So like Athos is always good when he's around, but it's for 1 chapter and he's force deployed, but you should use him because he's just that good. I think that goes without saying. Rebecca is not great for similar reasons as Will. She does have something going for her that a lot of audience do not, that I want to explore here, which is supports. Rebecca has a fire affinity, Lowen has a fire affinity, and Dart has a fire affinity, so I'm throwing him in Niche. If you want to use Rebecca because you love her, or you want to use one of these other units, or like, especially if you want to use, I mean, Lowen or Dart, honestly, they both work. Giving them +3 attack, +15 hit, +15 avoid, and +15 crit from the A support with Rebecca is a really good way to shore up their issues for all three of them. I mean, they don't support each other, but, you know, Lowen supports Rebecca and Dart supports Rebecca. They're fast supports. Honestly, if you're going to use this strategy, I would recommend just end turn grinding. Find a chapter where you can just end turn without losing anything. So, for example, in chapter 19, where Dart joins the Dread Isle, I wouldn't recommend doing this because after 15 turns, you lose the ability to go to the next chapter, the Ion chapter, with the Magic Seal for the first time. If you end turn spam there, you lose out on it because it's like a turn requirement. But in that chapter, in the guidance chapter after, you can do this. Dragon's Gate, I mean, you can do this, but you'll fight a lot of reinforcements. I think if you kill Darren, then you won't fight a lot of reinforcements. Same in... It's kind of hard to find more chapters to do this, but early game with like Lowen and Rebecca, you could probably find a lot of opportunities to grind your support up to max, and that's a big difference maker. I don't like grinding personally, and I try not to take it into account or like recommend it to people, but this is a strategy that I think if you enjoy using one or multiple of these units, this is probably something you want to do just to make your run a lot more fun. Just support grind them, and they'll be a lot better for it. If you don't do this though, Rebecca is a archer with 4 base strength, 6 base speed, no bulks whatsoever, and a long way to go. Does have like reasonably good growth. She does have like really insanely high speed once she gets going, and if you don't get strength screwed, she can be okay. But generally recommend against using Rebecca. So I put Dart on the list. I might as well tier him while we're here. I think Dart has potential to be a good training project. He has a lot of strength, a lot of HP, grows into having a lot of speed, and just has a lot of raw power and critical hit rate after promotion that can be very useful. Regardless of like Hawkeye existing, I think Dart, once he's promoted, is really good. The problem is, for one, his hit rates are far below average, and in Iron Man, if you miss unexpectedly, you can't just melt, explode, die, and that sucks. And 2, his promotion item issue, you do get a free Ocean Seal from Chapter 23, the desert. You can just pick that up and you have it. But teams that don't have Dart have the option to sell that for 25k. And that is a substantial sum of money. It can be used to recruit Farna, or it can be used for a bunch of killer weapons, or reefer weapons, or physics, or barriers, or what have you. It's a big sum of gold. It's not back-breaking or bank-breaking. You can totally just do it and still be fine financially, but you'll probably have to pay a bit more attention. But there's still a lot of gold in FE7. You have Louise's white gem. You have, I think, Jasmine or a Guiding Ring. I forgot what Jasmine has in Hector Hard mode, but I know there's a white gem and a Guiding Ring in that chapter. There's some promotion items you can sell probably, so usually you should have enough gold to keep the Ocean Seal and use it to promote Dart as opposed to selling it, but selling it makes things so easy for you financially. The other problem with the Ocean Seal, besides the finances, it just comes later than most promotion items. Guiding Rings, Night Crests, Hero Crests. From all these, I believe you get 2 before you get the first Ocean Seal, or maybe you get like 1 and then maybe 1 more. So Dart will promote a little bit later than most units. If you're trying to train him to 20, maybe he won't be quite at 20 yet, and it's not a big problem if you're trying to get him to 20. But just keep that in mind, that he's not going to have the option to promote earlier than a lot of other units. So if you can deal with all those problems, then Dart is okay. There's not really a great reason to do this for darts, like the times where this really high attack and later on high speed comes in handy is, it's not very often. Like you think, oh, maybe he's a good boss killer, but then his low hit rates can kind of get in the way. He doesn't have the best mobility to get to the bosses, and there's usually better ways to get rid of bosses. But there are worse units than Dart for sure. He's got some niche applications, and you could feasibly fit him into a good training project if you keep all these drawbacks in mind. So I don't hate Dart. I did forget to tier him initially when I was recording this video, so if my voice sounds different, that is why. Similar training project is Nino. Late game joins. If you train her to 20/1, so like train to 20, promoted through Sage, she'll be roughly as good as Pence at base. But, you know, funny growth units, you might want to do it to flex on the enemy. Carla, very late game joining unit that doesn't really do a whole lot, so I wouldn't recommend. That's most of the really silly units. There's a couple more interesting ones left though. Raven is a good training project. I would really recommend using him. When you're in like chapter 17, there's a couple of units that are like good at taking hits, like the big three here, but only one of them is doubling and killing things, and that's Marcus. Other than that, you don't really have a good unit that's just killing everything. That also has like reasonable bulk. Your fast unit is like Guy, besides that, and I guess Florina with a Slim Lance or something. Like even Lyn is not that fast. Raven can just walk up to an enemy and kill them most of the time. And if you do that often enough, you can get to like level 15, level 20, you can promote him, and then he no longer just has to use swords, he can use axes. So you can just start using hand axes and kill things at 1-2 range. It's really good. And he's a very low starting level, but his bases are much better than his level would suggest. And he's just very powerful. He's not without his weaknesses, he does have low luck so he can get crit. His defense and res are not that great, so if he takes too many hits he dies, and that's too many means like 2 or 3 or 4. Depending on the enemy type and what part of the game we're talking. But early on, it's like 3th KO most of the time, I think. Which is in KO range for crits, which is very scary. So be a bit careful, but I mean, it's not hard to train him at all. He kills a couple of archers in his joining chapter. The next chapter is a bunch of pirates you can train on. And then the next couple chapters are a bit rough for him because most of the enemy types are mercenaries he doesn't double. Pegasus is nice, he has weapon trial disadvantage against. And nomads that he cannot counterattack on enemy phase, and maybe doesn't double on player phase, depending on their speed and his speed. So kind of got to pick your matches a little bit carefully with him, but he's a really good like player phase assassin, kind of similar to Jafar, honestly. And once he promotes, gets hand axes, hopefully grows enough strength, and he just starts killing things. Hand axe weighs him down by 1, but doesn't matter because his speed is so good. He just doubles everything anyway. This is not even a Hector Harp mode kind of thing. He's also good in normal mode, but Harp mode, he stands out a lot more because his bases are so much higher. There's a reason I didn't even mention Hector Harp bonus up to this point, because like, yeah, Heath has him technically, and they matter, I guess, but the context of Hector Harp mode is what matters here more than their specific Harp bonuses. Plus they're tiny points anyway. While we're on Hector Harp bonuses, I want to shout out Guy. Guy is maybe a bit underrated. I used to put him in like similar tier to like these guys, but I think Guy might actually be a bit better. First of all, when he joins, his offense is like one of the best on your team. Defensively, not so much, but offensively, he's like almost on par with Marcus sometimes. Just with the killing edge, he can just one round on a brigand or a soldier or an archer or something. Just get it out of your way, and it's pretty rare at this point in the game. And he just does it at base, or he 2-shots them with like 3 shots at enemy with an iron sword, or 4 KOs, but he doubles, so it's still like a 3-shot. It's pretty good offense all around. Good avoid, like good enough to just almost reliably dodge axe users. And maybe some other things as well, but mostly just axe users at that point in the game. Now the problem with Guy is that he doesn't really have a great long-term like niche. He kind of turns into a Jafar kind of unit where he can double the faster enemies sometimes. He can double Valkyries in Cog of Destiny as long as he's been promoted for a while, because you need around, I want to say 24, 25 speed to double them. Guy, when he promotes, is like gonna have 20 speed max at level 20. And then he gets no speed on promotion, so you do have to get a couple levels while promoted with his 70% growth. But he'll probably get there, right? And then once he is level, I don't know, level 5 Swordmaster, he probably will double Valkyries and kill them. That's something that I praised Jafar for, so I think I should praise Guy for it as well. And similarly, like throughout the game, there are some fast enemies that are kind of hard to take care of that he can just do, like enemy nomads, enemy mercenaries, enemy myrmidons. He has a good shot at doubling all these. The big drawbacks to Guy, for one, is of course the lack of 1-2 range, but I think that's pretty obvious. The other one is the hero crest issue, and I don't mean the fact that he needs to promote with the hero crest itself. Like that's like there's only one you can get early on, but that's usually enough considering Raven is the only other good one, and they have a lot of overlap, so you probably wouldn't use both. The bigger problem is that you don't want to go to the Pale Flower of Darkness version that comes with using your hero crest users. I think most people notice at this point, but in a nutshell, the game, after the end of the previous chapter, the Vita chapter, checks how much XP have you gotten between Sarah, Urk, Lucius, and Priscilla. So 4 Guiding Ring users. Canas does not count. And the 4 Hero Crest users. So that's Raven, Guy, Dorcas, and Bartre. And whichever one has more, the Guiding Ring users or the Hero Crest users, determines which chapter you go to. So Kenneth is a bishop, so he matches the Guiding Ring user. So if they have more XP, you go to the Kenneth version. The Jeremy version, you go to if your Hero Crest users have more experience. And this experience is only in Hector Harp mode. So if you trained like, or in Hector mode in general, or Eliweb mode, not limb mode. So like the XP that Sarah and Urk and Lucius got in limb mode does not count towards this. Just the Hector mode experience. And similar for Dorcas in limb mode. So if you're using these guys, these geese, you either want to make sure that your hero or your guiding users outlevel them and that they don't die, because if they die, the XP is lost to the counter. If you have like 20 levels on Urk and like 19 levels on Gi, and Urk dies, then the hero quest users win, basically. So you want to make sure that the hero guiding users don't die, and you go to Kenneth. It's not like Jeremy chapter is like a game over or anything. It's just a very boring and long chapter that I wouldn't want to play personally. If you're okay with going to Jeremy version, then just do whatever. But know that using one or more of the hero quest users puts you at risk of going to a more boring, longer chapter. The Jeremy chapter's route, very long. Has a low chance of soft lock if you run out of keys. Like if your thief dies and you don't have any door keys, then you might get stuck. So make sure to count your keys beforehand. Maybe buy some in chapter 16 in the vendor. Or just bring a thief and keep him alive. If you go to Kenneth though, it's the siege chapter. It's a lot easier. The chapter is not like the easiest ever, but it's fine. And it's just a lot less tedious. I find that one a lot more fun personally. That's the main reason that I wouldn't recommend using these hero quest users a lot, is they're less fun. But it's a fun little mini game to try and keep the guiding users ahead of the hero quest users. But it can run antithetical to trying to power level Raven and or Gi. But at least Bartra and Dorcas are not that good, whereas the staff users are all kind of good. So there's another reason why Priscilla is so like nice to level up, is that it counts towards the guiding ring XP. Okay, then we got Wrath. I'm gonna put him in good training projects. He's not someone I would like count as like a carry that's gonna like enemy phase a bunch of guys. He's more like an assassin kind of unit that just kills one unit per player phase, with either a sword or a bow, mostly with bows. You don't really have that many good bow users. You have like Louise, so he's a good person to just give a good bow to, like a killer bow, a silver bow, a long bow every now and then, brave bow especially, and just just kill a guy at 2 range. There's not a lot of units here that have really good 2 range. There's units that are like killing things at 1-2 range, like Marcus and Hawkeye and Pent have no trouble killing enemies. Well, Pent is fine, but you know what I mean, right? A hand axe is less powerful than a silver bow. So sometimes if you want to kill something powerful at range, you don't really have a great person who can do that, but Wrath can. And similarly, he can do a lot of other like dumb things, like move further when it's snowing in the Kenneth map or the Jeremy map, or kill a wyvern, or or like rescue a really heavy unit because his 8 stat is so high, because he has a rare combination of low constitution but being a male mounted unit. So for example, Marcus is a male mounted unit, but his con is kind of high. It's like 11, I think. Florina and Fiora have low constitution and are mounted units, but they're female, so they have -5 to their aid, which means they can pick up less people. Wrath can pick up just about anyone in the game, and that can be handy sometimes. Again, emergency rescues is the most important part of this in Iron Man. So that's why I have Wrath here. I wouldn't train him like every playthrough, but if you have like space for him, maybe your other training project didn't work out quite well, it can be a like, good unit to deploy and just train. The XP curve in Hector Arc mode is very punishing for overleveled units, so sometimes having a high level unit that doesn't contribute anything, it can be better to bench them and replace them with a low level unit that gains a lot of XP. If you're doing like a ranked run, of course, that's also relevant, but that's not really the context of this video. But generally, just training Wrath a couple levels costs less than training any other unit a couple levels because he's so unleveled. He's level 9 if you start from Hector mode only, or if you played Limb mode and killed off Wrath, which I would recommend. It makes him better than if you start at level 7. Most importantly, he gets like B rank bows at base, and he just gets level 9 instead of level 7, so he's only 1 level away from promotion. But yeah, he's good, but I wouldn't like try to kill entire hordes of enemies with him because he's not really built to do that. Another really always good unit that I have here is Harken, who is just kind of self-explanatory because, I mean, strong hero kill things, right? I'm not really putting these in any order, by the way. They're just in an order that I discussed them in, kind of, and then I saw Athos was here. I was like, all right, Athos got to be at the end, right, because of availability. But yeah, Harken kills enemies good. Brave Sword is nice. He also uses hand axes and Brave Axe and killer axes and anything he wants to, really. He's so good. He one-ons Ursula at base, so in Battle Before Dawn, he's a good, like, just beat stick to kill things with, but also he's an enemy phase uniquely, unlike a lot of these other units. So yeah, use Harken. Don't use Corel. I don't know where I would put Corel exactly. Mostly for my guides, I assume that I don't count recruitment costs against someone. So I was toying with putting Corel like here, but he's honestly not even that good. He's just a kind of fast guy that doesn't double Valkyries at base, unlike Jafar. You wouldn't want to give him a speed wing just to do that, probably. So that really loses him a lot of utility in the like being fast thing. Like, what's Corel's base speed? Is it like 24? Yeah, it's 20. So it's the same as Guy at like 20/1, which is a little slow for the archetype he is. So you could like you could justify putting him here, but he doesn't really have the niche that most Swordmasters have. So honestly, I'm putting him here, but also because he passed up on Harken on him, which, again, usually I don't count that kind of opportunity cost here, but in a practical sense, I wouldn't recommend using Corel. So there you have it. In the same sense, I wouldn't recommend using Geats, because you have to train 2 really frail units for very little benefit. And Geats is nice. Like, if you have him, you should use him. If you are dead set on having Lyn, Eliwood, and Hector at an average at level 17 by the time that Chapter 23 or Chapter 23 X ends, then you're going to that Geats chapter no matter what, then you're going to get Geats, and you should. Like, you should recruit him and you should use him, because he's kind of like Hawkeye, just a strong axe user with a bit more speed, a bit less resistance and bulk in general. But he's still really good, and he has B rank bows. You can use like any bow you want, and also like any axe you want. He's great. But getting him is so hard that I wouldn't recommend going for him. That's what I'm trying to emphasize him here. But he's really nice to have. Finally, there's Vida, who's going to mess up my overlay if I put her in always good. So I'm just going to put her in grip mode for that. But you could reasonably put her here. She makes my tier list look ugly. I do think she's like the best of them by far, though. She has enough speed to double most things. Maybe not a couple things, but mostly. Really good bulk, really good strength. A rank in lances and swords, so use anything you want, including brave weapons if she needs them to double. Or quad even. Can even kill some bosses. If you put like Phila's Might on her with Nils or Ninian, she could just kill something. I guess Ninian is never around when Vida is, huh? No, she is for like 1 chapter. But yeah, she's just good. She's just good to have around. Honestly, I should put her in here. She's just that good. I'll just make my thing a bit longer. It's fine. It's fine, Copium. But yeah, Vida's great. She just isn't around a whole lot, which I would punish her for in a tier list, but it's not a tier list. So yeah, there you go. So that's what I would recommend for an Iron Man run, is I would use these units. If I wanted the best ones, I would pick some of these to train and see how they turn out. And if they turn out good, then keep using them. And if they fall off or they die, then it's okay. There's other ones too. Or they can be replaced with some of these units. I would field these units if I felt like they were better than whatever else I had available. I would train one of these units at the very least, because having extra staff users is nice. Just having Pent and Priscilla is nice, but I would really like to have one of these in addition to that. I would deploy these for chests. I would always deploy this guy on every map, probably, run this. I'd use these if you're looking for something spicy and different for your playthrough, or like there's something specific you wanted to do. But yeah, these are like units that have like niche applications every now and then. Like if you're gonna recruit Geats anyway, you might as well use him. If you want to have like a Swordmaster kind of type unit, then Guy is alright. Just watch out for Jeremy chapter, and she's nice for killing like Luna Druids. I still think she could go in here, but niche applications is probably okay for her too, because it does describe what she does to a T. And these units, I wouldn't recommend using them, but if you want to use them, just know you're in for a harder time. But if you're okay with that, then, you know, go nuts. They're not unusable. In fact, they can be very good, and it can be fun to post, like, screenshots to Discord saying, hey, look, I'm using this terrible unit, and they're kicking ass. Take that tier list. Yeah, there you go. That's a tier list that's actually useful to people, I think. Have fun. Bye.